just don't know. I don't know, don't know, don't know, don't know. Just don't. So I'm sneaking around trying to get closer to my then girlfriend. The year was the year 2000. And like I said to you in the last episode, my mother wasn't having none of that. She knew that this young lady, obviously, number one, was older and more mature, number two, and my mom was not about to let that go down. Well, luckily enough for me, the rebellious soul that I was at that time, I had a friend at church, and everyone loved this young man. He was about 26 or 27 at the time, and he was praised for his academic prowess. He was praised for his talents. He would sing special music at church a lot. He was just a mannerable guy. And I remember I used that to my advantage. He was 10 years older than me. But one evening I said, you know what? I know my mom and my dad respect this fella. They like him and his reputation is good. Why don't I get him to come and scoop me up, sell this idea to my parents that we're all going to go bowling. And then once he picks me up, we're going to go by and pick up my lady friend. So I put it in motion. And sure enough, my folks fell for it. He came and scooped me up. I had planned it to where another young lady at that church who perhaps was interested in me at the time was going to be there. And see, the catch was my folks approved of her because she was more my age and like me, mild-mannered and not fast. Well, I wasn't attracted to her at all. But I got her involved in the plan, which was cruel of me when I think back on it, because this perhaps made her think that maybe Andre is interested in me, when in reality she was just a pawn in my game. Because when the fella came to scoop me up, she was with him. He went and picked up one of his lady friends after they scooped me up. And that's when I told him, well, hey, there's one more person we need to grab. And it was, of course, the 22-year-old with the 3-month baby, 3-month-old baby. And sure enough, we went and scooped her up. I tell you, there's something about these emotions of love and any emotion really creates a sense of awareness that you remember details because of the emotion. For example, you may remember a particular smell because whenever you smell that particular item, it reminds you of that time you were angry. Or you may remember a particular sound because it reminds you of that time you were excited. And this was 22 years ago. When we picked her up from the home she was staying in, I remember the song by Jay-Z had just come out. And it was, let's see, don't fail me now, brain. It was that song where he's flying in an airplane in the video, him and Dame Dash. And it'll come back to me. But it's funny because the song is in my head, but I can't put the lyrics together right now. But I remember it vividly. I remember just the excitement that I felt when we picked her up. And so the other young lady that was in the car with me, she was left off as the third wheel. She was left to the side. And, again, looking back at it, I'm a little embarrassed. The song was, hey, Poppy, dum do 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 dum dum do 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 dum dum do do. Man, when we got in that van, went to this young lady's house and picked her up, that song was fresh off I believe it was the Dr. Dolittle soundtrack. It was one of them Eddie Murphy films from the early 2000s. And that song was popular at that time. And it came on the radio. I will never forget it. It's just how the memory is. That shows you the power of emotions. because the power of emotions can help you to remember things that are probably locked off deep into your subconscious, but because of the emotion, it triggers the memory and it comes back to the forefront of your mind. This was 22 years ago. And so she gets in the car, we drive off to the bowling alley. And the whole time we're in the car on our way to the bowling alley, I mean, I'm hugged up, nestled up next to her like a little teddy bear. You know, just green and naive, man. I mean, I promise you, when I look back at that, I could slap myself when I think about the way that I was carrying on. Excuse me, at that time. It was just ridiculous. But I didn't know any better. I was very much caught up in my feelings for this young lady, and she was encouraging it. And by that I mean she wanted me to fall deeper and deeper in this spell, in this web that she was spinning. But when I stop and I think back on it, as much as I felt that she was willing to enjoy the same love with me that I was enjoying with her, she was holding back greatly. She wasn't going all the way in this thing with me like I was hoping for. And when I say all the way, I'm not even talking about sex. I remember that I was caught up head over heels to the extent that when we were in this van riding together, I want to hold her hands. And I ain't talking about just holding hands. I'm locking my fingers in between her fingers. And although she would allow me to do these little things, I could feel her body language saying to me, I'm not really into that, Andre. And of course, we're all different. Our love languages are different. I've learned that in time. But it was very much like a business transaction, the type of love that she exhibited, the type of interest she exhibited in me. We get to the bowling alley and we're having a good time. Of course, the other friend, the third wheel, I guess by this time, obviously, she didn't figure out what's going on. Andre didn't invite me because he wanted me to be a part so that he could talk to me. I'm sure she denoted from the atmosphere that Andre used me. And, I think back on that time, and I am embarrassed to an extent. But honestly, I did what I felt like I needed to do. Considering the circumstances, I knew that my folks would not allow for me to just pick up this young lady and go out with her under a normal circumstance. So, yeah, I lied. I said some stories and I got some folk caught up. And I know many of us as Christians don't believe in karma. I won't say that I necessarily believe in karma either, but I do believe the Bible says that you reap what you sow. Much like a karma, what you put in, you get out. And with all of the heartbreaks and the things that I've gone through with women over the years, I can see how my decisions and choices that I've made have come back to haunt me. Well, I say we spent about an hour or two at the bowling alley, but my mother had given me a strict curfew of 11 o'clock, and at 17, that was reasonable. Plus, you got to remember, I'm living 30 minutes north of Miami, one of the busiest, most stirred up cities in the world, behind places like New York and Las Vegas. And so when you consider she didn't want her 17-year-old son unleashed in the streets of Miami, Florida. And so she gave me this curfew, and about 10 o'clock we left the bowling alley, but I was so caught up still that I did not want the night to end. I didn't want the evening to come to a climax. So I begged the fellow who came and picked us up, who was the chaperone at this point, to drive along the coast, Highway 1, on the beach, just to kind of stretch the time out so that I could soak in more of this atmosphere of love that I'm experiencing. And he consented. He decided to do what I asked. And I remember we parked at the beach. And we got out of the van. He had a little old Dodge Caravan, the old school version. Actually, it was the Chrysler van. You remember those old Chrysler vans. I'll put a photo up for you. And we got out of the van, walked along the beachfront, and I'm just soaking up the atmosphere, falling more in love or infatuation. And I remember when we got back in the van, I believe it's Bebo Bryson. I can't remember who sings this song, but again, remembering exactly what was happening that night and remembering the songs even that were on the radio that night, just to show you the power again of the emotions. The song came on, "If ever you're in my arms again, this time I'll love you forever." I know some of us old school folk know what song that is. And it was so appropriate because it was that very night, once we got back in the van and started our journey back to our respective homes, that she told me that, you know what, I only got a couple of weeks left here and I'll be back in New York. Man, the feelings are rushing back to me now as I'm recalling it. I'm thinking about what it was that I felt then. I remember up to this point, I had not necessarily ever made out with a woman. I mean, I'd kissed them. You've heard me share stories about me kissing on a woman prior to this episode in other presentations. You've heard that. But a woman of this age and developed and endowed in such a manner as her, it was never anything close to that. And so I remember when we were driving and she told me that she was leaving in a few weeks, I guess just to remind me to bring me back down to earth. I remember I started kissing her. I grabbed her by her chin and pulled her face up closer to mine, and I started kissing her on her lips. And I was and I am still a very passionate person. And she, for the very first time, consented. I guess in the moment, she even felt a little something like magic. Because when she kissed me, it was real. I could tell that the kiss was real. Now, I could still have been being played. This woman older than me, she's been around. But I think perhaps just thinking about the fact that he lied to his mother, he pulled this young lady out as a decoy, and then he's encouraging the chaperone to take us out to the beach and ride around. I think maybe all of that maybe started coming to her conscience like, this guy, even though he's young, he's green, and he's naive, he's got a little charisma. And I don't know. And right then when I kissed her, I mean, it was a very passionate kiss. I remember it to this day. She took my hand and she placed it on her chest and squeezed my hand onto her breast. Oh boy, yeah, your boy was sick in his mind. I was just like, oh, at this point, I had never really done anything like that. Again, I'm still 17. And man, that night ended so quickly. I remember taking her back home, dropping first Angel, I called her name. I hope she ain't watching. Dropping that first young lady off at her home, and then encouraging the brother to drop off his lady friend first as well, so that I could grasp as much time with my lady friend as possible. And he consented. He did all that I asked. And then after dropping the first two individuals off, he dropped off my lady friend. I got home, 17, knocked on the door. I may have missed the curfew by 20 minutes. But because, again, my parents were respectful of this young man, they didn't make a big deal out of it. And I remember going into my bedroom, and I had a Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls poster on the wall. And I laid on my bed like this, and I'm just daydreaming with a huge smile on my face.